6-year-old Emma Walsh was feeding ducks at Miller's Pond when the 85-pound pit bull mix broke free from its chain in the nearby trailer park, its scarred face and aggressive posture showing the signs of fight training that had turned it into a living weapon. The massive dog had already terrorized 3 neighborhoods before animal control could respond, but now it had found something that triggered its most violent instincts: a small child alone by the water's edge. "Emma, don't move!" screamed her grandmother Patricia from 30 yards away, but the child had already turned toward the approaching predator, her bright yellow dress making her an irresistible target for an animal trained to attack anything that caught its attention. That's when the cavalry arrived. 18 members of the Iron Brotherhood MC were returning from a charity ride for disabled veterans when they witnessed the attack beginning. These leather-clad protectors, led by former Marine Sergeant Tony "Bulldozer" Martinez, were about to demonstrate that real bikers don't run from danger. They position themselves between predators and the innocent, no matter what the cost. Would you like to join us for this incredible journey? Subscribe to our channel now so you don't miss what happens next. The Iron Brotherhood Motorcycle Club had been riding the highways of Central Texas for over 8 years, their membership consisting primarily of military veterans, first responders, and working-class men who had found brotherhood and purpose through their shared commitment to protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. What had started as weekend rides among former Marines had evolved into the most respected volunteer emergency response organization in 3 counties. Sergeant Tony "Bulldozer" Martinez, the 42-year-old former Marine who led the Iron Brotherhood, was concluding their monthly charity ride to raise funds for disabled veterans when his keen situational awareness, honed through 2 combat tours in Afghanistan, detected something that made his blood run cold. "All riders, emergency formation," Bulldozer commanded through his helmet radio to the 18 motorcycles following him along the rural highway. "Civilian in immediate danger. Large, aggressive dog, potential mauling in progress at Miller's Pond." The response was instantaneous and overwhelming. 18 Harley-Davidsons roared to life with synchronized precision as men whose average age was 38 prepared to engage in the kind of protective action that defined their brotherhood. These weren't weekend warriors or casual riders. They were former soldiers, police officers, firefighters, and emergency medical technicians who understood that someone's life depended on their immediate response. Captain Marcus Steele Thompson, a former Army Ranger riding point position, was first to spot the tactical situation developing near the pond. "Visual confirmation," he radioed back to Bulldozer. "Large pit bull mix advancing on small child, approximately 6 years old, female, bright yellow clothing." Through his battlefield binoculars, Steele could see Emma Walsh standing motionless beside the water, while an 85-pound fighting dog approached with the focused intensity of a predator that had been trained to view smaller beings as prey. The child's grandmother was too far away to intervene, and no other civilians were close enough to provide assistance. "Jesus Christ," whispered Staff Sergeant Rick "Doc" Anderson, a former Navy medic whose medical training allowed him to recognize the signs of an animal that had been conditioned for violence. "Look at the scars on that dog's head, the muscle development, the targeting behavior. This thing's been trained to fight and kill." Bulldozer felt the familiar surge of combat adrenaline as he processed the threat assessment combined with the tactical situation. An attack-trained pit bull weighing 85 pounds could easily kill a 6-year-old child within minutes, and the isolated location meant that conventional emergency services couldn't respond in time to prevent tragedy. "Dismount and advance," Bulldozer ordered, his Marine Corps training automatically engaging as he shifted into combat protection mode. Standard civilian protection protocol. This animal represents clear and present danger to innocent life. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. The 18 Iron Brotherhood members dismounted their motorcycles with the fluid coordination of men who had served in elite military units and understood that split-second timing could mean the difference between life and death. Their average age might have been 38, but their tactical training and protective instincts remained as sharp as they had been during active duty service. Emma Walsh stood frozen beside Miller's Pond, her 6-year-old mind unable to comprehend why the large dog approaching her looked so different from the friendly family pets she knew from her neighborhood. The pit bull's approach was methodical and predatory, its head lowered and muscles tensed in the classic attack posture that animal behaviorists recognized as preparation for violent assault. The child's paralysis was a natural fear response, but it also made her appear vulnerable and defensible to a predator that had been conditioned to view smaller beings as appropriate targets for aggression. Her bright yellow dress caught the sunlight, making her even more visible to an animal whose fighting training had taught it to focus on movement and contrast. Patricia Walsh, Emma's 64-year-old grandmother, was calling desperately for help while trying to reach her granddaughter, but she was 30 yards away and moving slowly due to arthritis and a recent hip replacement surgery. Her voice carried the terror of someone who understood exactly what was about to happen and felt powerless to prevent it. The pit bull was now 10 feet from Emma when the first Iron Brotherhood member reached the critical intervention point. Bulldozer Martinez, moving with the speed and precision that had kept his Marine unit alive during house-to-house fighting in Fallujah, positioned himself between the attacking dog and the terrified child. "Back off!" Bulldozer shouted in his command voice, using the authoritative tone that had controlled dangerous situations in combat zones. But the pit bull showed no response to human verbal commands. Its training had conditioned it to ignore everything except the completion of its attack mission. The confrontation that followed was unlike anything the Iron Brotherhood had encountered during 8 years of emergency response operations. The pit bull launched itself at Bulldozer with 85 pounds of trained violence, its jaws aimed at his throat with precision that demonstrated extensive conditioning for combat against larger opponents. Bulldozer caught the attacking animal with both hands, his Marine Corps hand-to-hand combat training allowing him to redirect its momentum while protecting his vital areas. But the force of the impact sent both man and animal tumbling toward the pond's edge, where the fight continued in conditions that favored the aggressive dog. "Bulldozers engaged," Steele reported through the radio network. "All units converge on his position. Protective formation around the civilian." The tactical coordination that followed demonstrated why the Iron Brotherhood had become legendary among Texas law enforcement agencies. 17 bikers established overlapping fields of protection while their leader battled a trained fighting animal in single combat that could easily prove fatal for either participant. If you've watched this far, say in the comments, what secret do you keep? Doc Anderson reached Emma first, his medical training combining with fatherly instincts as he scooped the terrified child into his arms and carried her away from the combat zone. "You're safe now, sweetheart," he said in the gentle voice he used with pediatric patients in the emergency room where he worked civilian shifts. "I want my grandma," Emma whispered against Doc's shoulder, her small body trembling with the shock of witnessing violence that no child should ever experience. "We're taking you to her right now," Doc assured her, maintaining calm professionalism despite the life-and-death struggle continuing behind them. "These are the good guys, Emma. We protect children." The battle between Bulldozer and the pit bull had moved into the shallow water at the pond's edge, where mud and algae made footing treacherous for both combatants. The dog's fighting training gave it advantages in close-quarter combat, but Bulldozer's military experience and protective motivation created determination that transcended normal physical limitations. Sergeant Mike "Hammer" Williams, a former Army demolitions expert whose nickname came from his ability to solve any problem with overwhelming force, had retrieved a heavy tire iron from his motorcycle and was maneuvering for position to assist Bulldozer without risking friendly fire in the chaotic struggle. "Can't get a clear shot," Hammer reported through gritted teeth. "They're moving too fast, and they're too close together." The pit bull's training was evident in its fighting technique. It was attempting to establish a grip on Bulldozer's throat or major arteries while using its powerful hindquarters to inflict maximum damage. But Bulldozer's combat experience had taught him similar techniques for surviving hand-to-hand combat against determined opponents. Corporal James Phoenix Jackson, a former Air Force pararescue specialist whose medical and tactical training made him invaluable in complex emergency situations, was coordinating the overall response while maintaining communication with civilian emergency services. "Emergency services ETA 12 minutes, Phoenix announced. "We need to contain this situation ourselves until backup arrives." 12 minutes was an eternity when a trained attack dog was attempting to kill someone, but the Iron Brotherhood had faced worse odds in military combat and understood that mission success depended on tactical discipline rather than individual heroics. The breakthrough came when Bulldozer managed to establish a control position that military combatives training had taught him, a rear naked choke that could render an opponent unconscious without causing permanent damage. The pit bull's fighting conditioning hadn't prepared it for this type of submission technique. "Got him," Bulldozer announced, as the dog's struggles began to weaken. "He's going down." The animal's loss of consciousness provided the Iron Brotherhood with the tactical window they needed to secure the situation without further violence. Steel and Hammer moved in with improvised restraints, motorcycle chains and leather jackets that could contain the dog safely until animal control arrived with proper equipment. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. The aftermath of the confrontation revealed the extent of Bulldozer's sacrifice for Emma's protection. His leather jacket was shredded, his arms showed multiple bite wounds that would require medical attention, and his face was cut from contact with the dog's collar spikes. But he was conscious, mobile, and refusing evacuation until he was certain that Emma was completely safe. "Status report," Bulldozer requested, as Doc Anderson completed his field medical assessment. "Multiple lacerations requiring sutures, possible concussion from impact with rocks, severe bruising on arms and torso," Doc reported with professional precision. "You need immediate hospital care, but nothing life-threatening." Patricia Walsh reached the group at that moment, her arthritis forgotten as adrenaline drove her forward to reclaim her granddaughter. "Emma! Oh God, Emma, are you hurt?" "I'm okay, Grandma," Emma replied, her voice small but steady. "The bikers saved me from the mean dog." The reunion between grandmother and granddaughter was emotionally overwhelming for everyone present, but the Iron Brotherhood maintained their protective perimeter until they were certain that all threats had been neutralized and civilian safety was assured. Animal control officers arrived 13 minutes after the initial attack, finding a scene that would become legend in their department: 18 leather-clad bikers standing in perfect protective formation around a family while their leader, bloodied but victorious, maintained control of one of the most dangerous animals they had ever encountered. "How did you manage to subdue an attack-trained pit bull without firearms or animal control equipment?" asked Captain Jennifer Rodriguez of the County Animal Control Division. "Same way we handled enemy combatants in Afghanistan," Bulldozer replied simply. "Training, teamwork, and absolute commitment to protecting innocent lives." The dog was secured in a specialized transport vehicle and taken to quarantine facilities where veterinary evaluation would determine its ultimate disposition. The severity of its conditioning for violence made rehabilitation unlikely, but proper procedures required comprehensive assessment before any final decisions. Emma Walsh was examined by paramedics and found to be physically unharmed, though she would require psychological counseling to process the trauma of witnessing extreme violence at such a young age. Her grandmother's gratitude was overwhelming and immediate. She understood exactly what these strangers had risked to protect her granddaughter. "How can I ever thank you?" Patricia asked Bulldozer as paramedics treated his injuries. "You could have been killed saving Emma." "Ma'am, protecting children is what we do," Bulldozer replied with quiet pride. "No thanks necessary." 3 months after the pit bull attack at Miller's Pond, the Iron Brotherhood Motorcycle Club had discovered that saving one child's life created responsibilities and opportunities they had never anticipated. 6-year-old Emma Walsh had become their honorary little sister, and her extended family had embraced the bikers with a warmth that transformed the organization's understanding of community relationships. Bulldozer Martinez sat in the children's section of the Miller County Public Library, reading Where the Wild Things Are to a group of kindergartners that included Emma and 12 other children whose parents had specifically requested Iron Brotherhood involvement in their kids' education. The scars on his arms were still visible, but they had become conversation starters rather than sources of embarrassment. "Mr. Bulldozer," Emma interrupted during a particularly exciting passage, using the title she had created for her rescuer. "Why did Max want to go where the wild things are? Weren't wild things scary?" Bulldozer smiled at the question, understanding that Emma was processing her own encounter with something wild and dangerous through the safety of literature. Over the past 3 months, he had learned to discuss courage and safety with children in ways that built confidence rather than fear. "Sometimes people need to face scary things to learn how brave they really are," Bulldozer explained carefully. "But the important thing is having friends who will protect you when the wild things get too dangerous." Emma nodded with the wisdom of someone who had experienced both terror and rescue. "Like how you and your brothers protected me from the mean dog." "Exactly like that," Bulldozer confirmed. "We're always here to make sure wild things don't hurt good people." The reading program that Bulldozer had established represented something unprecedented in biker community relations. Former combat veterans using children's literature to teach lessons about courage, friendship, and community protection that their own military experience had reinforced. Library director Margaret Chen had initially been nervous about hosting motorcycle club members for children's programs, but the professionalism and genuine care that the Iron Brotherhood demonstrated had completely changed her perspective. "These men have become some of our most popular volunteers," Margaret explained to the county commissioners during a budget hearing. "Children respond to them because they represent authentic strength, combined with genuine compassion. They're teaching lessons about courage and community that traditional programming can't achieve." The reading program had expanded to include 12 libraries throughout Central Texas, with Iron Brotherhood members driving hundreds of miles each month to reach children in rural communities where literacy programs were limited. Their commitment to child education had become as important to them as their emergency response capabilities. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. Dr. Michelle Carter, a child psychologist who specialized in trauma recovery, had been working with Emma since the pit bull attack and was amazed by her resilient response to what should have been a severely traumatizing experience. Emma's recovery had been accelerated by her continued relationship with the Iron Brotherhood members who had saved her. "Emma has processed this incident in remarkably healthy ways," Dr. Carter reported during a presentation to the American Psychological Association's annual conference. Her continued contact with her rescuers has allowed her to understand violence as something that can be overcome through courage and community support. Dr. Carter's research had documented something unprecedented in trauma recovery literature: the therapeutic value of ongoing relationships between rescue survivors and their protectors. Traditional therapy focused on helping victims process traumatic experiences independently, but Emma's case suggested that continued contact with protective figures could accelerate healing. Emma doesn't see herself as a victim because she continues to interact with the people who protected her, Dr. Carter explained to fellow psychologists. She understands that dangerous situations can be managed by competent adults who care about children's safety. The relationship between Emma's family and the Iron Brotherhood had evolved into something that challenged traditional understanding of motorcycle club culture. The Walshes had essentially adopted 18 protective brothers, while the bikers had gained a family that appreciated their military training and protective instincts. Patricia Walsh had become the unofficial coordinator for the Iron Brotherhood's community outreach activities, helping them organize charity rides, school presentations, and emergency response training that utilized their military skills for civilian purposes. Her experience as a retired elementary school principal made her invaluable for developing programs that served community needs. "These men have shown our entire community what real strength looks like," Patricia explained during a city council meeting about youth violence prevention. "They use their training and experience to protect others, not to intimidate or control." Her advocacy had been crucial in overcoming initial skepticism from community leaders who associated motorcycle clubs with criminal activity rather than community service. Patricia's credibility as a longtime educator and her obvious affection for the Iron Brotherhood had changed public perception dramatically. The transformation was visible in local media coverage, which had shifted from suspicion about motorcycle club activities to celebration of their community service contributions. The Miller County Gazette had published a series of feature articles about Iron Brotherhood programs that attracted positive attention from neighboring communities. Emma's father, Detective Lieutenant David Walsh of the Miller County Sheriff's Department, had initially been suspicious of the bikers, despite their heroic intervention on behalf of his daughter. His law enforcement experience had conditioned him to view motorcycle clubs as potential criminal organizations rather than community protectors. "I'll admit I was wrong about these guys," Detective Walsh told his fellow officers during a joint training session with the Iron Brotherhood. "I judged them based on stereotypes instead of actions. They represent the best of what citizen volunteerism can accomplish." The training session had been designed to improve coordination between law enforcement and civilian emergency responders, but it had also created mutual respect between professional police officers and veteran bikers who shared commitment to public safety. Detective Walsh's endorsement had been particularly influential because of his reputation for thorough investigation and conservative approach to community partnerships. His willingness to work closely with the Iron Brotherhood had encouraged other law enforcement agencies to explore similar relationships. If you've watched this far, say in the comments, what secret do you keep? Captain Marcus Steele Thompson had applied his Army Ranger training to developing a community security assessment program that identified potential threats and vulnerabilities before they could harm residents. His experience in urban warfare had taught him to recognize patterns and environmental factors that created dangerous situations. "We're not trying to replace police departments," Steele explained during a presentation to the Texas Association of Chiefs of Police. "We're providing early warning systems that help law enforcement prevent problems instead of just responding to them after people get hurt." The security assessment program had already identified 3 domestic violence situations that required intervention, 2 properties being used for drug manufacturing, and 17 locations where inadequate lighting or poor visibility created opportunities for criminal activity. Steele's reports were shared directly with Detective Walsh and other law enforcement officials, creating a collaborative relationship that enhanced public safety while respecting jurisdictional boundaries and professional protocols. The intelligence-gathering capabilities that military veterans had developed during combat deployments proved invaluable for civilian community protection. The success of the security program had attracted attention from the Department of Homeland Security, which was interested in community-based threat assessment models that could identify potential terrorism or extremist activity. Steele had been invited to participate in federal training programs that combined veteran expertise with civilian security needs. Military veterans understand threat assessment and pattern recognition in ways that traditional security programs often miss, explained Homeland Security analyst Robert Foster during a briefing about community protection initiatives. The Iron Brotherhood model demonstrates how veteran skills can enhance civilian safety. Doc Anderson had established a mobile medical clinic that served rural communities throughout Central Texas, using his Navy medical training and civilian emergency room experience to provide health care in areas where traditional medical services were limited or unavailable. "We learned to provide combat medical care under impossible conditions in Iraq and Afghanistan," Doc explained to medical students from the University of Texas who had requested to observe his operations. "Now we're using those same skills to help families who can't access regular health care." The mobile clinic operated from a converted recreational vehicle that the Iron Brotherhood had purchased and equipped using donations from grateful community members. Doc's medical services were supplemented by other veterans who provided transportation, security, and practical support for families facing health emergencies. The clinic's success had attracted partnership offers from major hospital systems, but Doc insisted on maintaining the Iron Brotherhood's independence and volunteer-based approach. "We're not trying to replace professional medical care," he explained to hospital administrators. "We're filling gaps that traditional healthcare can't reach." Emma had become the clinic's unofficial mascot and junior volunteer, helping Doc organize supplies and providing comfort to other children who were frightened by medical procedures. Her presence demonstrated to young patients that the intimidating bikers were actually gentle protectors. "Emma shows kids that we're safe," Doc observed during one of his regular reports to the Iron Brotherhood leadership. "When they see her helping us and trusting us, their fear disappears and they let us help them." The mobile clinic had provided services to over 300 families during its first year of operation, including emergency medical care, wellness checkups, vaccination programs, and health education that prevented serious conditions from developing in isolated communities. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. Sergeant Mike Hammer Williams had channeled his Army demolitions expertise into a construction and repair service that helped elderly and disabled community members maintain their homes. His ability to solve structural problems with creative engineering had made him invaluable to families who couldn't afford professional contractors. Mrs. Henderson needed wheelchair access to her front door, but she couldn't afford construction costs, Hammer explained during one of the Iron Brotherhood's monthly community service reports. "We built a ramp system that meets ADA requirements using donated materials and volunteer labor." The construction projects that Hammer coordinated had included handicap accessibility modifications, roof repairs for storm damage, plumbing and electrical work for low-income families, and emergency structural stabilization for homes threatened by foundation problems. His work had attracted volunteer participation from local construction workers, electricians, plumbers, and other skilled tradesmen who appreciated the Iron Brotherhood's no-nonsense approach to helping people solve practical problems. The construction program had evolved into a comprehensive home repair network that served over 50 families annually, with priority given to elderly residents, disabled veterans, and single mothers who lacked resources for maintaining safe housing. Hammer's engineering background had also made him valuable for disaster response planning, working with county emergency management officials to identify structural vulnerabilities and develop rapid repair protocols for storm damage or other emergencies. The Iron Brotherhood's construction capabilities give us response options that we've never had before, explained Emergency Management Director Susan Rodriguez during a presentation to state officials. They can deploy skilled labor and equipment within hours of a disaster declaration. Corporal James Phoenix Jackson had developed a youth mentorship program that provided guidance and support for teenagers who might otherwise be attracted to gang activity or substance abuse. His Air Force pararescue background had taught him to remain calm under pressure and think strategically about complex problems. Kids need to understand that real strength comes from helping others, not hurting them, Phoenix explained to a group of high school students during one of his regular presentations. Military service taught us that lesson, and we want to pass it on to the next generation. The mentorship program included job training, educational support, character development activities, and exposure to positive male role models who demonstrated alternative paths to respect and achievement. Phoenix's program had been formalized through partnership with the county school system, providing structured after-school activities, summer employment opportunities, and college preparation support that helped at-risk youth develop positive futures. 17-year-old Marcus Johnson, whose father had been killed in a car accident 2 years earlier, found stability and direction through Phoenix's mentorship that traditional counseling had failed to provide. Mr. Jackson understands what it's like to lose people you care about, Marcus explained to Dr. Carter during one of her program evaluations. He helps me understand that being angry doesn't help anybody. Marcus had transformed from an angry, directionless teenager into a confident young man planning to join the Air Force after high school graduation. His transformation demonstrated the effectiveness of veteran-to-youth mentoring that provided both practical guidance and emotional healing. The mentorship program had achieved remarkable success rates, with 93% of participants graduating from high school and 78% pursuing higher education or military service. The program's effectiveness had attracted funding from state agencies and private foundations. If you've watched this far, say in the comments, what secret do you keep? The annual commemoration of Emma's rescue had become the largest community event in Miller County, bringing together over 2,000 people whose lives had been touched by the Iron Brotherhood's various service activities. The celebration honored not just the dramatic pit bull confrontation, but the ongoing work that had grown from that terrifying afternoon. 3 months ago, 18 men proved that real bikers don't run from danger. They run toward it when children need protection. Patricia Walsh addressed the enormous crowd during the anniversary celebration. Today, those same men continue protecting our community through service that makes all our families safer. The celebration included live music from local bands, demonstrations of motorcycle safety, displays of military memorabilia, food vendors donating proceeds to veteran causes, and testimonials from community members who had been helped by various Iron Brotherhood programs. Emma, now 6.5 years old and confident beyond her years, had become the unofficial spokesperson for the Iron Brotherhood's youth programs. Her presentation about courage and community demonstrated the values that her protective big brothers had instilled through their example. Mr. Bulldozer taught me that being scared is okay, but letting scared feelings stop you from helping others is not okay, Emma told the audience with the poise of someone who had learned profound lessons about courage and character. All my Iron Brotherhood uncles were scared that day, but they still came to help me because that's what family does. The emotional impact of Emma's speech was visible throughout the massive crowd. But Bulldozer, was most moved by her understanding of the complex relationship between fear and duty that had motivated every veteran's military service. The anniversary celebration had attracted media attention from regional television stations and newspapers, creating positive publicity for motorcycle club community service that contrasted sharply with typical media portrayals of biker culture. However, national tabloid media had ignored the story entirely, focusing instead on sensationalized accounts of motorcycle club violence and criminal activity that reinforced negative stereotypes rather than highlighting positive community contributions. The tabloids don't want to report good news about bikers, observed local journalist Sarah Martinez during a panel discussion about media representation. Stories about community service don't generate the same advertising revenue as stories about conflict and crime. Sheriff Robert Harrison, whose department had initially been skeptical of motorcycle club involvement in community safety, had become one of the Iron Brotherhood's strongest advocates after witnessing their professionalism and effectiveness. The Iron Brotherhood has demonstrated something that challenges conventional thinking about community policing, Sheriff Harrison told attendees at a statewide law enforcement conference. Sometimes the most effective protection comes from citizens who are willing to put themselves at risk for others. The sheriff's endorsement had led to formal cooperation agreements between the Iron Brotherhood and law enforcement agencies in 3 counties, creating a model for civilian police collaboration that was being studied by departments throughout Texas. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. Dr. Carter observed the anniversary celebration with professional fascination and personal admiration. What these men have created goes beyond emergency response or community service, she reflected during an interview with local media. They've developed a therapeutic model that helps both veterans and civilians process trauma through positive action. The transformation was evident in each Iron Brotherhood member's demeanor and purpose. Men who had struggled with post-military adjustment issues now had clear missions that utilized their training while serving positive community needs. Staff Sergeant Kevin "Tank" Rodriguez, whose combat engineer experience had left him with PTSD and adjustment difficulties, had found healing through his work coordinating the Iron Brotherhood's disaster response capabilities. Building things that protect families gives me the same sense of purpose I had building forward operating bases in Afghanistan, he explained during one of Dr. Carter's research interviews. Tank's disaster response program had been activated 4 times during the past year, providing immediate assistance following tornado damage, flood emergencies, and a major house fire that displaced 12 families. The Iron Brotherhood's rapid deployment capabilities had proven invaluable for community recovery efforts. The psychological healing that occurred through protective service was documented in Dr. Carter's research, but it was also visible in daily interactions. Veterans who had once avoided social situations now actively sought opportunities to help neighbors and mentor young people. "Emma saved us as much as we saved her," Bulldozer reflected during a presentation to military transition programs. "Protecting her gave us a mission that used our training for something positive instead of destructive." The Iron Brotherhood's success had attracted attention from veteran organizations nationwide, with requests for consultation and training that could help other groups develop similar community service programs. However, the organization's leadership insisted on maintaining focus on local community needs rather than expanding into national consulting or franchise operations. "Our strength comes from knowing our neighbors and understanding our community's specific needs," Steele explained to potential partners. Corporal Danny "Roadblock" Martinez, Bulldozer's younger brother, who had served with the Army Military Police, had developed a school safety program that provided security assessments and emergency response training for educational institutions throughout the region. "Schools need to understand potential vulnerabilities and have plans for responding to various threats," Roadblock explained during a presentation to the State School Safety Commission. "Our military experience gives us perspective on threat assessment and crisis management that can help protect students and staff." The school safety program had conducted security evaluations at 37 schools, identifying weaknesses in access control, emergency communication systems, and crisis response protocols that were corrected before they could be exploited by potential threats. Roadblock's program had also trained over 200 teachers and administrators in basic emergency response techniques, creating networks of trained personnel who could respond effectively during various crisis scenarios. If you've watched this far, say in the comments, what secret do you keep? 1 year after the Pitbull attack, the Iron Brotherhood MC had become the most respected volunteer organization in Central Texas, with their model being studied by veteran groups, law enforcement agencies, and community development organizations throughout the state and beyond. Their success had attracted new members, not just military veterans, but police officers, firefighters, emergency medical technicians, and skilled tradesmen who wanted to be part of an organization that combined brotherhood with meaningful service. The organization had grown to over 60 active members while maintaining the discipline and values that had made them effective. New member orientation included character assessment, skills evaluation, and commitment verification that ensured organizational integrity. The growth had required new organizational structures and leadership development programs that maintained the Iron Brotherhood's core mission while accommodating increased membership and expanded responsibilities. Sergeant First Class Maria Gonzalez, an Army veteran who had served in Iraq and Afghanistan as a military police officer, became the first female member of the Iron Brotherhood after demonstrating exceptional commitment to community service and organizational values. Maria earned her place through service and character, not because we needed to meet diversity quotas, Bulldozer explained during a presentation about inclusive veteran organizations. She represents the same values of protection and service that define every Iron Brotherhood member. Maria's membership had opened opportunities for the organization to serve female victims of domestic violence and sexual assault who might be more comfortable working with female responders. Her law enforcement background also enhanced the Iron Brotherhood's capabilities for community safety programs. Emma Richardson, now 7 years old and entering 2nd grade, remained at the center of their extended family structure. Her academic excellence, social confidence, and leadership qualities reflected the positive influence of having 18 military veterans as active mentors and protective figures. Emma represents everything we fought to defend during our military service, Steele reflected during the first anniversary celebration. A child who grows up safe, confident, and understanding that strength comes from protecting others rather than dominating them. The girl who had once stood paralyzed beside Miller's Pond was now confidently speaking to audiences about community service, veteran appreciation, and the importance of intergenerational relationships. Her transformation from frightened victim to community advocate demonstrated the lasting impact of effective mentorship and protection. Emma's school presentations about veteran appreciation and community safety had inspired hundreds of other students to volunteer for Iron Brotherhood projects and develop their own service initiatives. Her influence extended beyond personal development to community leadership that multiplied the veterans' impact. Principal Susan Martinez of Emma's elementary school had incorporated the Iron Brotherhood's character education presentations into the official curriculum after witnessing their positive influence on student behavior and academic performance. The Iron Brotherhood members serve as incredibly effective role models, Principal Martinez explained to the State Department of Education during a presentation about innovative character development programs. Students see them as heroes who demonstrate that real strength comes from protecting others. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. The educational partnership had led to formal agreements that brought Iron Brotherhood members into classrooms throughout the county as guest speakers, mentors, and examples of positive citizenship that transcended stereotypes about military veterans and motorcycle culture. The Iron Brotherhood Youth Leadership Academy, established during the organization's 2nd year, had become a summer program that served 43 teenagers annually with intensive character development, leadership training, and community service projects. The Academy's curriculum combined military leadership principles with civilian community service, teaching young people to understand leadership as responsibility for others rather than authority over others. Academy graduates had established their own service projects in high schools throughout Central Texas, creating a multiplier effect that extended Iron Brotherhood values to hundreds of additional young people who had never directly participated in their programs. 18-year-old Jessica Chen, who had completed the Academy program 2 years earlier, had established a peer counseling program at her high school that helped other students navigate family problems, academic challenges, and social pressures. The Iron Brotherhood taught me that leadership means helping other people solve their problems, Jessica explained during her high school graduation speech. "Now I'm studying social work so I can make helping others my career." Jessica's transformation from shy immigrant teenager to confident community leader demonstrated the Iron Brotherhood's ability to bridge cultural differences through shared commitment to service and protection. 2 years after 18 bikers had positioned themselves between a trained attack dog and a terrified child, the ripple effects of their courage continued to spread throughout Texas and neighboring states. The Iron Brotherhood model had been adopted by veteran motorcycle clubs in 7 states, creating a network of community protection organizations that served thousands of families. The growth had been coordinated through formal training programs that ensured consistent standards and values across affiliated chapters. The Iron Brotherhood's founding principles, military discipline, community service, and protection of the innocent, became the foundation for a movement that challenged public perception of motorcycle culture. The National Iron Brotherhood Alliance had been established to coordinate training, share resources, and maintain quality standards across affiliated chapters, while preserving each organization's local focus and community connections. Alliance conferences brought together leaders from different chapters to share best practices, coordinate disaster response capabilities, and develop new programs that addressed emerging community needs. The Alliance had also attracted attention from federal agencies interested in community-based security and emergency response capabilities that could supplement traditional government services during major disasters or national emergencies. If you've watched this far, say in the comments, what secret do you keep? Emma Walsh had become a symbol of the transformation that was possible when communities embraced protective relationships rather than fear-based isolation. Her continued growth and development provided living proof that trauma could be overcome through support, love, and positive role modeling. Emma shows us what happens when children grow up knowing they're protected by adults who care more about their safety than their own comfort, Dr. Carter concluded in her published research about community-based trauma recovery. The research had influenced policy discussions at state and federal levels about effective approaches to veteran reintegration and community violence prevention. Dr. Carter's documentation of the Iron Brotherhood model had contributed to congressional hearings about alternative veteran support systems. Her research had been published in multiple peer-reviewed journals and had influenced the development of similar programs in other countries dealing with veteran reintegration challenges following military conflicts. Bulldozer Martinez, now recognized as a national expert on veteran community service programs, had been invited to testify before congressional committees about the therapeutic and social benefits of protective volunteerism. Military veterans understand mission-focused teamwork and sacrifice for others, Bulldozer told lawmakers during a hearing about veteran services. When we give them missions that protect civilians, they rediscover the purpose that made their military service meaningful. His testimony had led to pilot programs in 12 states that attempted to replicate the Iron Brotherhood approach to veteran reintegration and community service. The success of these programs varied based on local leadership and community support, but the overall results exceeded expectations for traditional veteran services. The pilot programs had received federal funding through the Department of Veterans Affairs and had been incorporated into official transition assistance programs that helped military personnel prepare for civilian careers. The Iron Brotherhood Training Institute had been established at a former military base in central Texas, providing 3-week intensive courses for veteran organization leaders who wanted to develop community service capabilities similar to those pioneered by the original Iron Brotherhood. The Institute's curriculum included emergency response training, community assessment techniques, youth mentorship methods, and organizational development skills that enabled effective community service operations. Graduates of the Institute had established successful community service organizations in 38 states, creating a national network of veteran-led groups that provided emergency response, youth mentorship, and family support services. The mainstream media had largely ignored the Iron Brotherhood's community service activities, focusing instead on stereotypical portrayals of motorcycle clubs that emphasized conflict and criminality rather than protection and service. The tabloids prefer stories about biker gangs and violence, Patricia Walsh observed during a journalism ethics conference where she had been invited to speak about media representation of community organizations. They're not interested in stories about veterans who risk their lives to protect children. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. But for the thousands of families who had been helped by Iron Brotherhood programs, media recognition was irrelevant compared to the practical reality that someone cared enough to respond when they needed assistance. The organization's impact was measured not in media coverage, but in lives saved, families protected, young people guided toward positive futures, and communities strengthened through coordinated volunteer service. 3 years after the terror at Miller's Pond, the Iron Brotherhood had responded to 47 emergency situations, provided services to over 800 families, mentored more than 200 young people, and established partnerships with law enforcement agencies in 11 counties. But statistics only told part of the story. The real measure of their success was visible in individual transformations: veterans who had found purpose through service, families who had discovered support during crises, and young people who had learned that strength comes from protecting others. The Iron Brotherhood's annual report documented their activities with military precision, but the narrative that emerged was one of healing, protection, and community building that transcended any single dramatic rescue or emergency response. "We saved Emma from a pit bull attack 3 years ago," Steele reflected during the organization's 3rd anniversary celebration. "But Emma and her family have saved us from isolation, purposelessness, and the belief that our military training had no peacetime value." 4 years after the attack, Emma had become the youngest spokesperson for veteran community service programs, addressing audiences at state conferences and federal hearings about the importance of intergenerational relationships in community building. "The Iron Brotherhood taught me that heroes don't just appear during emergencies," Emma told state legislators during a hearing about youth development programs. "Heroes are people who prepare to help others, who train to protect people, and who choose to serve something bigger than themselves." Her testimony had influenced state funding for veteran community service programs and had been cited in federal legislation about alternative approaches to veteran support and community violence prevention. Emma's academic performance had placed her in gifted and talented programs, but her teachers noted that her most remarkable quality was her consistent leadership in service projects and her natural ability to help other students resolve conflicts peacefully. "Emma has learned leadership skills and conflict resolution abilities that most adults never develop," observed her 4th-grade teacher, Mrs. Angela Rodriguez. "She mediates disputes between classmates, organizes fundraising activities for community causes, and consistently demonstrates the values that her Iron Brotherhood family has taught her." If you've watched this far, say in the comments, what secret do you keep? 5 years after the terror at Miller's Pond, Dr. Emma Walsh was completing her undergraduate studies in social work while serving as the student coordinator for veteran support programs at Texas State University. The child who had been saved from a pit bull attack had grown into a young woman whose career was dedicated to helping others overcome trauma and find strength through community support. "The Iron Brotherhood taught me that heroes don't just appear during emergencies," Emma told her social work professors during a presentation about community-based intervention strategies. "Heroes are people who prepare to help others, who train to protect the innocent, and who choose service over self-interest." Her academic work focused on the intersection of veteran mental health and community service, drawing on 15 years of personal experience with former military members who had found healing through protective action. Emma's undergraduate thesis, titled "From Combat to Community: How Veteran Service Organizations Create Mutual Healing," had been selected for publication in the Journal of Social Work Research and was being cited by academics studying veteran reintegration programs nationwide. The thesis documented the Iron Brotherhood's evolution from emergency response organization to comprehensive community service network, analyzing the psychological and social factors that made their approach effective for both veterans and civilians. Emma's research had influenced the development of social work curricula at universities throughout Texas, creating academic programs that prepared future social workers to collaborate effectively with veteran community service organizations. The Iron Brotherhood continued its mission under the leadership of Captain Steele Thompson, who had succeeded Bulldozer as president when the founder retired to focus on national consulting work. The organization now operated chapters in 11 states and maintained formal partnerships with law enforcement agencies, veteran services, and community organizations throughout the Southwest. Our mission hasn't changed since that day at Miller's Pond, Steele reflected during the 5th anniversary celebration. We protect people who need protection, we serve communities that need service, and we prove that strength comes from lifting others up. The organization had evolved from 18 motorcycles responding to one emergency into a comprehensive network that provided disaster response, youth mentorship, educational support, medical services, construction assistance, and emergency protection for vulnerable community members. The 5th anniversary celebration brought together over 5,000 people, including families who had been helped by Iron Brotherhood programs, veteran organizations that had adopted their model, law enforcement agencies that had partnered with them, and community leaders who had been inspired by their example. The celebration included the dedication of the Emma Walsh Community Protection Center, a facility that housed the Iron Brotherhood's training programs, emergency response equipment, and administrative operations, while providing meeting space for other community service organizations. This center represents everything we've learned about community protection, Emma said during the dedication ceremony. It's not a fortress to keep people out. It's a gathering place that brings people together to serve others.